Hey everyone, Andre here to bring you 10 tips for Super Mario Maker 2, and specifically the stage creator and how to use it. Now since the series is going to be brand new for a lot of people out there, some of these tips may be a little bit more basic and you may be familiar with them if you played the first one, but otherwise most of them should either be new to you or are exclusive to Super Mario Maker 2. So with that out of the way, let's get to the actual tips. And also real quick, I am recording this video off the cuff, so please forgive me for any mistakes or verbal mishaps or whatever else I have going on in this video. So, tip number 1, interface changes. First up, one of the big ones is how you access the alternate forms or options of the different objects and enemies. So this time, how it works is you just long press on an enemy or object to bring up every option available for them. In this case, or in Goomba's case, you can give him a mushroom to make him bigger, you give him wings to let him hop around, or in other enemies' cases, fly, or you can give him a parachute so he can fly to or fall slowly to the ground. It's all pretty cool stuff. Now, in some other enemies' cases, it gets a little bit more interesting because with the Hammer Brother, in the 3D World style, he actually has an alternate form, being the Fire Bro. So that's super neat, but is unfortunately again exclusive to the 3D World style. But one thing that's exclusive, but one thing that works across all styles is if you give him a mushroom, he'll turn into a Sumo Brother, which is great. And in the 3D World style, you can also make him a Sumo Fire Brother. So yeah, that's all good stuff to know. Again, just long press on any object to bring up all the options available. Now next up is if you find yourself using an object a lot, it can be a little bit annoying to find it every time in the search menu, or in the radial menus. So something you may want to do is you can pin it to the bar just by, again, long pressing. So if you find yourself using 10 coins for whatever reason, a bunch, you can. Myself, I recommend pinning ground as well as slopes over here, and perhaps any other terrain object. These are the ones you're probably going to be using the most. But hey, it's up to you. If you find yourself using like Hammer Brothers a lot, you may want to pin them on there. So now that we've covered how to modify most objects, let's move on to tip number 2, because there are a few others you can modify that the game doesn't tell you about. Now, a few of these are ones that are already pretty obvious to you probably, being blocks like either bricks or question blocks, in which you can of course put a power-up inside of them. However, there are a few other objects that can now do that you may not know about. So first up are the trees from Super Mario 3D World, because like in the actual game itself, you can add power-ups or coins to them, by the way, that it gives it to you by climbing up all the way to the top. And there we go. So pretty neat stuff. But beyond that, though, is the fact that the checkpoint from Super Mario Maker also returns, but this time, unlike before, you can also add power-ups to it just by dragging it onto it. And it'll award it to you by triggering it, which is super nice, so that's super useful. Unfortunately, in both of these cases, you can't add enemies to them, which would be a great troll move, so yeah, just want to make that clear. Also, while you can add coins to the tree, you can't add it to the checkpoint flag. So yeah, just in case you were wondering about that, you can't. Now, there was one other thing about the checkpoint flag real quick I wanted to point out that's also, I believe, a new feature, and that's the fact that you can actually, when you're putting it down, you can actually instantly change its direction by moving the control stick in that direction, or your finger in that direction. So if you want to face to the side, you can, or you can have it face, wait, let's try it now, hold on. You can have it face, I'm going the wrong way. You can have it face upside down, there we go. Of course, you can just tap the arrow too to spin it around as you want, but yeah, just thought I would point that out to you. It's a nice little feature. Alright, moving on, let's do tip number 3, because we're going in order here, being button shortcuts. So yeah, if you're playing with a controller especially, these button shortcuts are really useful, so you don't have to go over to each of the individual icons each time you want to use it, but even when using handheld mode, these are useful as well. And you've already seen me use a few of these. So first up is if you hold the B button, you can undo, so I can bring back the checkpoint flag, so that's really useful, just instantly undo things. Next, if you want to get rid of stuff instantly, tap L to bring up the eraser. Now so far, both of those shortcuts are actually listed on their icon itself. You can see L on the eraser and B on the undo dog, which is useful, but there are a few more options available that aren't made clear on the interface itself, such as the triggers, because if you tap them, you can bring up a few other options, like the ability to multi-grab objects, which is super useful, which we'll do here, and not only can you move them around like this, you can also combine it with other features like erase to just get rid of both at the same time. You can select a whole bunch of objects if you want, all at the same time. Beyond that, you can also multi-grab them to copy them as well, so you can copy sets of objects. So this is all, again, really useful stuff. Finally, the final button shortcut I want to talk about is the play option in the bottom left corner, because as you may already know, if you tap select, you can instantly access it to test your stage. But beyond that, there's a new feature now in Super Mario Maker 2 where if you hold select, you can start from the very beginning of the course, which is great. So yeah, make things just a little bit easier so you don't have to scroll manually all the way to the start of the stage. And you know what, I lied, there's one more tip I wanted to point out, and that's a fact is that you can also scroll faster by holding Y. It's not really a shortcut per se, but it is another useful button feature to be aware of. And that brings us to tip number 5, which is how the stop scroll feature works, where you're able to stop the screen from scrolling either horizontally or vertically at any point in your stage, regardless of whether your stage is horizontal or vertical. It'll work in both. And the way to do so is simply by drawing a line of ground tiles, either horizontally or vertically across the entire length of your stage. So depending on how wide or tall your stage is, this could go on for quite a while. Now the catch with this is, for one, it has to be a completely unbroken line of tiles. So if there's a single gap in it, as you'll see here, it won't work. And unfortunately, you can't fill that gap with anything. It has to be either one of two things. One, either ground tiles, or B, it can also be hard blocks. That's the only exception to this rule. So if you slap a hard block in there, you'll see that it also works. In fact, we have a whole wall here of ground bricks, which should also stop it, as you can see. Yep, there we go. So either of those work, and there is one key difference between the two, and that's the fact that hard bricks are actually breakable by a few different things. One of them being, where is it here? Let's see if I can find it. Bonsai bills. So this allows you to set up a situation where, actually, let's arrange this a little bit differently. So this lets us set up situations where it looks like you can't go any farther, but then, let's see what happens, the suspense. The bonsai bill opens a path for you, which is super, super useful. So there you go, that's how stop scroll works. Next up is tip number 6, which involves how to use sound effects, or more specifically, how to use music to change the soundtrack of your level. Because one of my favorite features about Mario Maker 2 is there are a ton of sound effects now, and as part of that, there are 2 new music tabs with a ton more music options than the original game offered. And there's a few ways you can use them to change the music in your level. For one, if you just plop it into the stage, such as right here, it'll only activate once Mario actually touches it. There we go. The downside is that it only stays active for about as long as it stays on the screen. Once you go too far away, the music resets to the normal one, but you can activate it once again. So you can put a whole bunch of your level in if you wanted, so it's constantly activated. But there are better ways to make sure that music's constantly present. But before we get to that, you can also apply it to certain objects, such as bricks, in which case it's only activated once you touch the object. But once again, it's only active for as long as you're on screen. But there are a few other options here. For one, if you attach it to an enemy, it'll actually play as soon as that enemy is on screen. Now again, they have to stay on the screen or thereabouts, but you don't have to interact with the enemy first for it to take effect. So that's pretty nice. Beyond that though, you can also attach it to a vehicle. Here we go, attach it to the Koopa car here, and as you'll see, even after we take him out, it doesn't activate yet. It only activates once we hop into the car or into the vehicle itself. And this applies to the Koopa Clown car as well. Finally, if you want the music to change for pretty much the entire duration of the level and end from the very start of the level, attach it to Mario himself. Check this out. Now, no matter where you go, the music is always going to play, unless you override it, I think, with another music track. But yeah, this will now be the default music for the course, and I just died as a result. So yeah, that's how you can use music to basically change and augment the theme of your course, which is really nice. Alright, for tip number 8, I'm going to bring up a separate stage here, but this involves how tracks work in the game. Now, if you played the original Super Mario Maker, or if you watch my videos on it, or my video on this stage even, then you probably have some idea of how this works. Because tracks are super useful in allowing you to perform complex maneuvers beyond what you can normally. Because, if I can get to my subsection here, I'll show you what I mean. Because you can put enemies on tracks up here to perform functions. So what I've done in this case is I've put a bunch of bombs on the track that are activated by the burners, and then they explode just as they reach the on and off block. And what that does is it ends up changing the dotted blocks into solid blocks and back again, as you can see right there. And the way I've arranged it is that they are on about a 4-second timer, so there's enough of bombs here that every 4 seconds one of them is activating that block. Now, something else about this is you may have noticed I have this contraption set up directly above Mario at the very start of the sub area, or the level itself. And the reason for that is because of how enemies work in Mario Maker, in that they only spawn within about screen's width or height of Mario. So, because of that limit, if enemies didn't spawn until later, it would totally throw off the timing of this contraption. However, if enemies spawn on a contraption at the start of the level, they'll remain on the contraption, moving at a constant speed no matter where you are. So while other enemies despawn once they get too far away, these guys will keep going along the track and will operate exactly as I intended them to. So that's why having them spawn all at once at the start of the stage was essential to how this worked. So you can use this to create all kinds of cool contraptions and creations and gameplay mechanics, which you can already see other uses of in my other Mario Maker levels in the first game, where I recreated things like Space Invaders using tracks such as this. So yeah, have fun with this option, and yeah, I just want to point that out to you. So use tracks in creative ways to create cool stages, basically is the end of it. For the final 3 tips, we need to go to handheld mode because they are handheld exclusive tips. So I'll join you in handheld mode in just 1 second. And we're back, this time in handheld mode to showcase the final 3 tips. And for tip number 8, I want to show off some handy hidden touchscreen controls. Now, you may have already seen the video we posted earlier about these, but I figured it'd be good to go over again here, especially because there's one more I wanted to point out. So first up is the fact that, like your smartphone, you can actually pinch to zoom out or stretch to zoom in, which is way nicer than clicking of sticks. It's not a huge deal, but it is nice to know. What's a little bit nicer is you can use 2 fingers to quickly pan around your stage, both up and, both vertically and horizontally. And if you zoom out, which I should have just done the gesture with, see, that's how ingrained I have to use the sticks now. If you zoom out, you can pan across the stage super fast. Look at that! It's pretty much instant. It's crazy how much quicker this is than using the standard controls. So yeah, that's all nice to know. Now something else you may not know is a feature that returns from Super Mario Maker, the first one, and that is there's another way to quickly delete things beyond using the eraser. And that is if you grab an object and just drag it off the stage, it gets automatically thrown away. You can throw it off any edge. You can see a little trash can appears, which didn't appear in the original, to indicate you threw it away. So yeah, you can just drag it and drag off. I am using a stylus, it works with your finger as well, but I think a stylus is a little bit more satisfying. So yeah, just grab it, drag it off the screen. You have to do it pretty quick though, so that's the main thing. You do it slow, it'll think you're trying to place it. So instead you just gotta drag it off quick. Next up we have tip number 9, which is a little bit related, and that's the fact that there are other ways to scroll the screen quicker, not as fast as using the 2-finger method. However, if you hold the Y button, you can scroll the screen pretty quick. Also, another way to do it is if you tilt both control sticks in the same direction, you can also scroll faster. So here this is Y, and then both sticks. However, the key thing is, you may notice the speed is pretty similar, but if you combine both of those methods, being Y with a stick, you can go way faster. Look at that, whoa! Again, not 2-finger quick, but definitely, definitely quicker all the same. So again, we're holding both sticks in the same direction, and then while also holding Y. Yeah, so knowing how to scroll quicker comes in useful for one particular feature, and that is either planning a whole bunch of, when you want to put a whole bunch of stuff at once. Either terrain or coins, for instance, because doing this is a little bit tedious. However, if you scroll while holding Y, it's way faster, especially, with terrain if you want to set a whole bunch of ground. So, and you can also combine this, again, with, or let's see, can you combine it with the, I forget, let's see. Yeah, you can combine it with the control stick method too. It's a little bit cumbersome because you have to hold a lot of things at once while touching the screen, but yeah, there you go. That's a way to apply terrain faster, which does not work when in docked form. So there you go. Finally, that brings us to tip number 10, which is another touchscreen trick that you may not have realized. Because if you're playtesting a level and you want to get somewhere where you're not supposed to normally, there's a way to do so without going back into editing mode, and that is just grab Mario with your stylus or your finger and just drag him wherever you want. There we go, now we're in a whole new section. We can put them up here. It is super useful, and not only is it useful for that purpose, but it also makes him invincible. So he can't get killed by enemies. So this is a great way to experiment with with how enemies interact or what's going on in your stage without putting Mario at in peril. There we go, it took a little while to get out. So yeah, it's super useful. I use it pretty often to test more intricate stages, and I highly recommend doing so yourself. Oh, there we go, finally done with all 10 tips. Man, that took way longer than I thought, especially because you didn't see all the times I took to record this video, which is just a complete disaster. Anyways, hopefully these tips help you out, and if not, I'm sorry. And with that, thanks for watching. Of course, stay tuned to GameXplain for lots more on Super Mario Maker 2 and everything else Nintendo Switch. We'll catch you later. Bye.